Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Fest, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. Welcome to the Bomb Squad, guys. I'm not holding any cups because I'm the host. Um, where we review bad movies or good movies. Today, which one could we be doing? We brought back Eli Villapando
Hi, with the camera now.
with a camera now, so you know who's talking. And as you know, on our second, oh Eli, you have something. Do you want to talk about V versus Rorschach?
Oh yes.
I'm
So
gonna put a link to
last time
that.
I was on, I think we were talking about how we were about to start doing that, and we did it. We filmed it, and it released on YouTube a couple months back. We did have a cool little theater release as well,
Nice.
and yeah, so far it's doing great on the YouTube's iShapes YouTube page, and it's our most recent video that's on there. So yeah, you all should check it out.
Sweet, and I'll put a link at the bottom. Go check it out, guys. Looks super cool. But also, yeah, are you working on anything else right now?
Yeah, so currently, right now, we are just gonna start building up our content and then just being covered for the rest of the year in terms of just smaller short sketches to post on YouTube. And then we're working on two short films, but they're gonna have a higher budget and just collaborating with more filmmakers. So crazy year.
Sweet, sweet. That's super cool. But yeah, so as you know, on the second time we're gonna start a thing, but William had to do something this week. Who knows? Who knows what that guy's life is up to? So we needed a guest. We brought Eli back. And as you know, we picked the movie on the second time, and this was a movie that I wanted to pick. So I saw this. Like, this movie has a terrible reputation. I think it made like $8 in the theaters or something, and people constantly talk about how it's terrible. But I saw this movie back when I was a kid, and I remember being like, "Hey, it wasn't so bad." And let's find out if that's stable the case. We talked. This is 2004's Mindhunter, directed by Rennie Harlan, who's actually going to direct the new Stranger Things trilogy. It's coming out this
Oh,
summer, and it literally has an insane cast. It stars Catherine Morrison, who you've never heard of, but nobody has. Um,
right.
she plays the lead. It stars LL Cool J, Johnny Lee Miller, Patricia Velasquez from the Mummy fame, Clifton Collins Jr. Damn, it's all full of Latinos. Christian Slater and Val Kilmer. Why did I get that name wrong? But anyway, Josh, why don't you hunt these mines for us and tell us what Mindhunters is about?
All right, so it's a team of soon to
Hey, Josh, is it
be.
hunting season? Because I think mines are on the menu.
Mines do get hunted in this film. Arguably, it's a case of hunter versus hunter in the mental realm. Yeah, they're like FBI recruits, and they all want to be profilers, and they're all friends. And then Val Kilmer's like, "Hey, I've set up this elaborate trap island to test your mind hunting skills. Do you have what it takes to be the ultimate mind hunter?" And they all say, "I hope so." And then it turns out real deaths start happening, so they have to mind hunt like never before to figure out who the real killer is.
So let me tell you, before we start getting into it, we like to keep our synopsises very short because like we're gonna discuss the movie as we go along. But let me tell you what the like just the setup for this movie is. Okay, so it's a bunch of the best of FBI recruits, and they're in a class where they put them in almost dangerous situations to see how they would react, and then they treat them like it's like GI J Navy SEAL style training, which the
Yeah.
FBI does not do. They just made that
Oh
up.
yeah, none of
Yeah.
this is. They have like an elaborate like former amusement park island that they've like
So
populated with
then they're
traps.
like,
Such a
Yeah,
cool location, though.
I know it
It's
is.
so cool.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
like, we're gonna sign. You signed up for this special class taught by Val Kilmer, and he's like, okay, so for our final, we're gonna take you to Murder Island, but we're gonna put you in a scenario where like we're gonna have real dead bodies and everything, and you're just left there all weekend trying to figure out the case. And we're not even gonna be around. You can't even ask us questions. We're just gonna be gone, I guess. Wink, wink. And it's like, why did you guys make up all like, oh, and then they're like, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, we got a call from some other agency, and this dude is just gonna be here observing. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, LL Cool J, cool. And it's like, okay,
Cool.
why is this the beginning of this film? So, and then they're like, oh, and now real murders are going, but also the fake murders that Val Kilmer set up are traps, and the real murders that the killers set up are also traps. It's like going up against fake Jigsaw and real Jigsaw, and
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah,
the
it's.
FBI does not do this.
I
Dude,
did.
it's so
I,
intense.
I did have to look it up because I was like, did this come out after Saw? But no, it was like the same year. So they both just
Oh,
You
wow.
could,
had the idea of.
well, it comes off the heels of like Hostel and like CSI and stuff, and you can tell.
Yeah,
You can 100%.
it's very.
It's
Yeah, it's
also
very. Well, and we should say too, it's not just a murder island. He has like other murder houses. Like the opening is like a fake out where you think they're hunting a real serial killer, Christian Slater and the girl,
yeah,
and then they get like they fail.
right.
And then he's like, by the way, there was no way to pass that. This is just to see how you deal with failure.
I
It's like, what?
I also completely forgot that Christian Bale's in this movie. Also, at the very
Well, there's a reason
beginning,
for that.
Christian
Clifton,
Bale?
I mean Christian Slater. Sorry.
Christian
Oh, I
Slater,
was
yeah.
like, yo, I missed that.
He was playing Batman. So there's a part at the beginning where Clifton Collins Jr., who's in a wheelchair, and the main girl are like talking, and he's kind of like he looked through the papers or something. He figured out that he's not gonna become a profiler, and neither is she. And he tells her, and like they gave Clifton Collins Jr. like heavy makeup to look like he hasn't slept in a year, and so he's like, they say I'm not focused, and then they cut to him, and he literally looks like a serial killer who hasn't slept in like 2 weeks. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna trust Val Kilmer's evaluation on this. I do not think. And then his character is a cop who always has to be around his gun. It's like, I'm starting to see why you're not focused and you're
Yeah,
getting bad reviews.
he's like, you could take my wheelchair, you could take
Yeah.
everything as long as I have my gun with me. It's like, you should not have a gun, sir.
The best part, though, is when LL Cool J is like, "Ah, dude," and he just goes and grabs it, and I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
At
like
one point, they
that's
they
fucked up.
they realize the reality of trying to take a gun away from someone who is immobile, and they realize that it's not that hard. Also, okay, so they get to the island. What did you guys think of this movie overall?
I think honestly, like I really dug it
Yeah,
because I've never seen this movie. So watching the beginning, I was like, "Oh dang, this is pretty intense."
yeah,
And then it was like a big fake out. I was like, "Okay, cool, cool, cool." And it just progressing through it, like the whole "who did it, you
mhm,
did it," kind of like Scream esque type thing. It's kind of like finger pointing.
yeah,
I was like, "Okay, I dig this," but I think overall, I enjoyed it.
yeah.
Definitely early 2000s one liners just everywhere.
There's like a
Oh, cool.
scene where there's a camera spinning around every single character, and I
Yeah.
got dizzy because it's cutting to one
It's
character
Yeah.
and
just
it's
Yeah.
spinning, and
yeah,
it
to
cuts to
show
another
you
one.
it could be any of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very yeah.
The cutting of it is just like that's what sets it up in the beginning too. Is
Yeah.
it's just cutting crazy, and you're like, oh shit. But yeah.
This was yeah, no, it is weird because I will say too, I was like, this movie feels really familiar, like I've seen it before. And then they get to the climax, which I won't spoil, but it takes place near a pool. And I was like, oh, I have seen this movie before. That's why it feels so familiar. But it's like, I do feel like it does a good job of kind of keeping you on your toes for most
Right.
of it to be like, oh, the killer could be like three different people. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's actually a legitimate case and it doesn't do like the Saw fake out thing where like that's insane that it's that person. It's like no,
Right.
no, it makes sense for all these people to
Mhm.
like be part
Well,
of
and one
this.
of
You
the
know,
interesting things about this is that um, that was a direct note from director Rennie Harlan. He wanted it so that there was no obvious victims or
Mm.
characters, and so he wanted to establish that anyone could be the killer, and that comes in kind of hilarious ways, as we'll get to it later. But I will say, I think the biggest problem is that this is like a fun kind of Saw style midnight movie, but the beginning is so like it takes so long to
procedural
establish that it
kind
kind of
of.
feels like the beginning feels like a Silence of the Lambs style movie, but then like the
Yeah.
rest of the movie's like a fun who done it. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it kind of got bad reviews because like people were expecting it to be less
It
like more
sets it. Yeah,
serious. Yeah.
they even well they do kind of have before they go to the island before LL Cool J shows up. They have like a thing where they're all just hanging out the bar trying to like pick up women and whatnot, and it's very like
Yeah.
sitcom, like
Right.
almost like an episode of Friends, and it's like, what is the tone here? But then they really do kind of lock it in once they get to the island, so
Yeah.
I
Also,
think
that
that helps.
island, did you notice anything about it, Josh?
Oh, it's like from another movie, isn't it?
Yeah, what movie?
You know, I meant to look this up and I didn't, so
Well, I didn't need to look
why
it
don't you
up
just
because
tell
it's
me?
from Hellboy. It's a
Oh,
BPRD.
oh yeah, the
Ah,
that's pretty cool.
that's awesome.
But yeah, and also like every time I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, did I actually like this movie or just like that the BPRD is in another film?
Oh my god.
Um,
C-
also,
Come on our podcast, Guillermo del
also
Toro.
okay,
That's
so they
my
get to the island and then Val Kilmer's like, oh, all this stuff is gonna happen. Then they wake up the next day and they there's like a cat that's been killed. And then later on, which I thought was funny, the killer was like, I knew exactly how to unnerve you guys. That's why I put
It's
the
like a
dead
cat.
cat. And I was like, that would have unnerved anyone. Like that doesn't you didn't that wasn't like a
Here's
specific
the
thing.
shot of the cat, and it's just like I was like, well, yeah.
He like hung the
yeah.
cat and it's like all cut up and he's like,
He's
yeah,
like, yeah, I knew your psychological tick. A dead, mutilated
dead
animal
animal.
appearing in the bathroom behind you. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That'd be
horrifying.
like saying
Yeah.
I knew what his weakness was, bullets. Luckily no one says that in this movie. Um so then they
You
get
know, like, yeah, they establish it pretty well, and I think what really makes this movie work is because they still think it's part of the test, right? Like with
Yeah.
the cat, they're like, oh, it's Val Kilmer, agent. I don't know any of the character names. They're like, Agent Val Kilmer is testing us, um, and then it's the most horrific first death, and
I
it's
think
so good.
I think
It's
that
really good.
that's kind of
It's
like
so
because
good.
every time I watch it, I'm like, wait, is this part of the game? Because okay, so
Yeah,
there's like
It's
an
not Tropic
elaborate
Thunder.
Rube Goldberg machine And then Christian
Yeah.
Slater is playing the Christian Slater character. So he like is like, I'm gonna do it. He presses it and it does like a bunch of shit. But at the very end, it shoots like fucking hydrogen. What?
Nitrogen.
Yeah,
Nitrogen.
hydrogen.
Nitrogen.
Like
Yeah, yeah. It's
it
freezing his
freezes his
bones.
legs, and he's like, I can't move. And nobody's like, hey, kick the tank, so it's not shooting at his legs. And they're like, don't touch him. And then he like
He's like,
falls.
help.
He's like slowly freezing, and then his legs break because they're so frozen, and he falls on the ground, and then he splits in half.
That
And
was crazy.
keep in mind, this is the first death we've seen.
Yeah.
It's so fucking hardcore.
It's like literally his body is in frozen, shattered segments,
Yeah.
and it's Christian Slater who's kind of the biggest actor amongst like the core group. So it's like, oh, it's like that's the fake out. Is like, no, he dies first,
Yeah.
you know.
And
Well, and the
so
best part is like the lead up to it though too, because you're like watching it go, and then it leads to that. You're like, holy shit!
I know it almost seems like it should have been a mistake, but instead it's just like, no, that's what the trap was. And so then they're like, okay, this is real. So let's search the island. And then there's like a montage of them searching the island. And I think that Rennie Harlan forgot how big that island was supposed to be. Because they're like searching the forest. They're like searching like plains. They're like in the mountains.
They're like with the gun thing. They're like
Yeah.
the infrared. It's
They're
like
like
going
in
around.
the jungles, like moving around. I was like, how big is this island? No wonder so many killers come here. It's like 4 miles long.
They're like, did you check everywhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the surface.
It's physically impossible to check every part of this island. It's a continent.
It's like the Batcave. Sometimes it's 100 feet, and sometimes it's like 50 miles of subterranean under. Yeah, whatever's needed.
And so, like, the cool thing is, yeah, they're constantly always like suspecting each other, and so as people get, like, all the deaths in this movie are insanely hardcore.
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
They're really good. They're really good.
Here's a cool, and essentially once they figure out that you know, oh, this was a real murder, and they do the Tropic Thunder thing you're talking about, where the first death, they're like, nah, that was like special effects. Like, no, this motherfucker's dead.
Yeah,
It's like that's not possible. But then they're like, oh, it's obviously LL Cool J. He's the only not member of the friend group. He's not part of our
all the
FBI
FBI
team.
agents were like, who should we blame this on?
Yeah, the one black guy.
What is the difference between LL Cool J and every other member of the cast?
To be fair, he's the only one they didn't know before the island.
And
so
they were fucking with him too, you know, because he's just minding his own business, and just as soon as they meet him, we're like kind of fucking with him.
Yeah, it's very cop behavior. But they kind of they like get him.
They tie him up.
Kind of like they tie him up like away from everyone. I don't know. Is that before or after everyone drinks drugged coffee and passes out? Because I like that scene.
It's after, because they all drink coffee and then they all pass out. Although there's
which is that dude, his like head.
Well, coffee.
Fucking random.
They're all talking and they're like, hey, maybe. Oh, they wake up from the coffee, and then LL Cool J's like, what if it was that guy? He's the one who made the coffee, and they're like, is that true? And they like pick him up, and his head falls off.
Oh, yeah.
God damn! Why? And like, to be fair, like they're freaked out, but they're never as freaked out as they should be. Like, oh, it's not only a death; it's a I'm gonna get my head chopped off death. Like that's the worst kind of death.
Yeah, they're almost like, oh, we're trying to figure out this escape room. It's like your people are dying horribly. You guys should be like fucking freaking out right now.
So they're like, and it's funny because they have LL Cool J, and then one of the things, like I said, like Rennie Harlan clearly didn't want there to be dummy characters, but also almost every time they talk, they kind of go through like, oh, it couldn't be me because, and it's like they always have to say why it couldn't have been them. Which was interesting.
Right, and then someone will be like, actually, I know your backstory, so this is why I think it is you, because, like, you're going to fail, or your sister died, or, you know, whatever, right?
And
so it's all very...
They have LL Cool J, and they're like, we're going to tie you up, and then Clifton's going to watch him, because, like, we're going to go look for people or killers or whatever. And then there's, like, a pretty funny scene where Clifton, like, he's like LL Cool J has already explained himself. He's like, here's why I'm here. Actually, I'm supposed to be watching Val Kilmer because we heard that his tests were too severe, kind of setting Val Kilmer as like, oh, he could be the guy. And they're
Right.
like, so they sent me here to like make sure that he's on the up and up. And then people started dying. And then they're like, we don't believe you, so we're gonna keep you locked up. And then they have Clifton, and like everyone leaves, and Clifton is like guarding them, and he goes, "All right, dude,
Dude,
start talking." And I want Al Coach to be like, I just told you everything. what talking about what? Like about our days or like
I do love that, yeah, because that's where there's like a water, like it starts
yeah.
flooding, and like the electricity, it's like the water's like electrified, and then um Clifton's like out of his wheelchair because he's trying to stay above the water, and then Ella's like, throw me the gun, I can like do it because I have such powerful upper body strength,
dude
like
takes
look
off
at
his
me.
shirt.
I
Takes off
know.
his shirt to like.
He's like, let me flex my abs so you know how easy this will be for
And
me.
then
And he finally like relents, and then he saves the
well, he
day.
gives
Then
him
he
the gun, and then LL Cool J shoots the wall, and then
9mm holes,
yeah, and
so
he
he can
makes
use them as.
I
he
know.
punches holes in him, but it's like nobody has that much upper body strength. They can be holding themselves up by one hand, punching a hole in the wall, and then do it again like 8 times. And then I thought,
Which is funny because it's like there were pipes. Just have him climb the
and there's
pipes.
also like, just get Clifton, have him hang off of you, and then come back. Because LL Cool
Yeah,
J
let's see how strong you are.
he
Yeah,
goes all the way past him,
I want
and
to see
then
him do that.
to turn off the water. And I was like, this seems like way more work than what you were like just getting him.
Well, I think like because like they would have just been stuck down there anyway if he hadn't turned off the
Oh,
electricity.
well, but
Because
the
Yeah,
people were coming
yeah,
eventually.
yeah, true.
yeah.
But one of them could be a killer.
True.
See.
Yeah, that is correct. And so then they're like, "Oh, it couldn't have been LL Cool J because he saved us, or he saved that guy." So they let him out, and then they're like, "You know what we got to do now, guys? Police work." And then there's like a hot fudge montage of them just doing CSI on like all the victims.
Yeah, to like early 2000s, like metal. I loved it. Where
Yeah.
they're just like da da
Yeah, I
da
was
da,
watching
and
the
they're like just
intro.
like flipping through files and like doing like test
Yeah.
tubes.
Felt straight like an intro, like to like a CSI type thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And then because like they don't actually that doesn't actually result in any real.
yeah, I think that doesn't help.
Yeah,
So
they're like,
It
then
doesn't.
oh, I need a
the
cigarette.
the mummy is like, hey, I don't trust any of you guys, I'm gonna leave. And again, keep in mind at this point, they know that A, they've been knocked out, so anyone could have messed with their shit. And B, whoever is doing this is messing with stuff all over the island. So then the mummy is like, oh, you know what I need to do? I need to get a real quick cigarette break from cigarettes that I found on the floor. And as a former smoker, it's not unheard of, but maybe in a murder weekend, you stop to like don't do it that weekend.
This this is the worst death in the movie.
It's a hundred
Yeah.
This is
percent,
horrible.
and it goes on for so
Yeah.
long. So then you
It
find,
was.
oh, go ahead.
No. I was like, yeah,
Oh,
it was.
you find out that they put acid in the cigarettes to the point where even smoking them will have the acid leak onto your shoe and burn a hole in your shoe,
And the
and then
hand.
and your hand. And so she's smoking, she's
And
like,
is
ah,
burning her like throat. Yeah,
and
it's
then she's
like
just
at
burning
least with
everywhere
Christian
else.
Slater, he it hurts for a couple seconds, but that's
And
God,
then
your
they
throat.
like
What a
go
horrible way to
watch. They
die.
like go outside because they what they realize is that the killer has been studying all the people on the island, and they're using their weaknesses against them. So like Christian Slater's brashness, they used it against him. He was the first one. That other guy, they just kind of said that one guy liked to turn off water. I don't understand. Like one of the guys just turning off a hose, and then he
He
gets
couldn't help
shot.
Oh yeah,
And they're
himself.
like, he couldn't help himself, and I was like, help himself do what?
he was like a first responder type or something. It was something like that. Like he loves to be
I feel like
useful.
him and Christian Slater have a very similar. They like ran out of weaknesses.
There were so. One of them was like he loves coffee, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh
well,
yeah.
you got drugged by the coffee. I don't.
What if it was like, hey, I know he loves Pokemon, it's like I did for a while, but I kind of got over it.
I did actually think too. It's like, what if one of them just didn't care for coffee in that scene, and he's not related to the murder, so he just sees everyone
I
pass
know,
out.
he
He's
just
like,
goes there.
oh,
Like
Oh
so,
shit!
then she's
he's
like,
drinking
then
water.
she's smoking this acid and she's dying. She's like ripping off her jacket, and there's like her lungs are just bleeding out and coming out of her body. And then she falls into the water and drowns. That's how she actually dies. So they were like, like dissolving from the inside isn't horrific enough for this
Yeah,
character who, to be fair, has really done nothing good or bad. Like she
Oh
should,
yeah.
she should not deserve. This,
very neutral.
this death. All she did was hook up with Christian Slater, which shouldn't be punishable by death, guys. But yeah, that one was like, holy shit. And then so they're like, oh, someone knows all our weaknesses. And then they're like, oh, and that's when the camera was like spinning around them.
Yeah.
And they're like, who could it be? And they're like, it's gotta be this guy or this guy. And so they all separate. And then they're like, oh, it was and then Clifton gets off his wheelchair and he's like crawling, but he has his gun. And then the most obvious thing happens: the gun misfires and blows his brains out.
I don't understand that though, because they were firing it. So I was like, was it the clip? I was so confused. I was
They
trying to
like
figure it out. Was it the clip, or
it
how
was.
did they get his gun?
So what they did was they didn't give him his gun. They replaced his bullets with another round of bullets, and so he put it in. It backfired and it shot the metal back at his head and blew his head off.
It was like rigged in some way. Yeah, it was bad. This is also where they're like, well, it has to be Val Kilmer because they find like recordings of Val
Oh
Kilmer taunting them.
yes,
Dude,
And then they're like, oh, he must be in this part, and they go and they find his like
Gnarly.
strung up body.
When he
Yeah.
his
starts
body and it's
fucking-
hanging.
Oh yeah, because the killer calls himself the puppeteer. That's really the only time it comes up. It's like that
And
he's
then-
like a
so-
fake puppet.
So the guy's hanging, but then also there's video playing of Val Kilmer being tortured. They're like, hey, we got a cameo. We're gonna use.
and he's a
him.
badass dude.
And he's like,
He
"You're
goes, if
never
I'm gonna
gonna
die, I
beat
want to
these
say
guys."
That was where this is also kind of like during the research period where they're like, wait, he wrote Croatoa, and they like explain like the Roanoke like historical reference. So like, so what does that mean? This guy wants to be famous. It's like that's a weird.
I know that's what I said. That part felt very much like Ronin, where I feel like they really just wanted to include the story of Ronin,
they're like,
but it
this
didn't make
seems
sense.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, this is a cool thing to put in a movie.
Because it's
Let's
like,
just
well,
throw
we
it in
didn't all
here.
disappear at once. It's not really like that at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then they start playing music and his body's like moving like a puppet. And I was like, man, this guy has a lot of time to do.
It was crazy. That part was really gnarly. But what I found funny though is the fact that he's like that recording that's playing. It's like him being like, "You don't know who you're messing with.
Yeah.
You don't know." Like cut to like the first part of the movie, he's like talking shit to them, being like, "Oh, you guys, you're not gonna pass." And he read the files; they weren't gonna pass.
Yeah,
so it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And also, I think it's funny that I mean, I know why they're doing it, so we don't know, but like all his lines of dialogue are very specifically so he doesn't give away the killer's reveal, but so that it shows us that he knows who the killer is, because he's like, "Yeah, you thought you were the best, but actually you're not." It's all like a lot of stuff that's like this could apply to anyone that's still alive at this point. But yes, so then they're like, "Oh, I know who it was. It was LL Cool J." And then they're like, so then they start fighting with LL Cool J, and then the Johnny Lee Miller character has died. He got shot, and so they're like, but then he comes back, but he was like bleeding out of his mouth, and he comes back and he's like, "Oh, I have a bulletproof vest on." And they're like, "But your mouth was bleeding." And then, so then they're like, "Hey," they're like, "Oh, what a rough weekend." And the girl's like, "I know." And then he's like, "Shouldn't do that again." And she's like, "Right?" And he's like, "I guess they're trying to kill." And I was like, "There's too many one-liners at the end of this thing." And then the girl's like, "Oh, by the way, I did another final test to prove that it was him." And you're like,
that was LL. Yeah, she's like, I put residue on the clocks because he keeps timing our deaths, and I fucked with this one clock. So when he changed it back, the residue would get on his hands, and then it's not on LL Cool J's hands.
And
It's
then
on the white
it
guy's
is on Johnny Lee
hands.
Miller's hand. And, like, I like how he picks it up
Yeah.
and he's like, "Whoops, Sarah." I don't know if her name's Sarah, but it
It
seems like it
just
would be.
turns
Yeah.
like weird.
He
It's
goes
like,
so
okay.
crazy, and then he's like,
Yeah, some
his
stew.
his reasoning is that he killed his parents when he was young, and he really liked
Oh,
killing
oh
them.
yeah. He was like, I killed my parents, and I thought they were gonna arrest me, but the cops were like so dumb that they just were like, "Hope you're okay, son." And he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna keep killing
Yeah,
people because they're
Yeah.
so
yeah,
dumb."
and then he's
You
like, "But I
know.
had to," but because like, okay, again, so the reason that he liked to kill, but then he dealt with the authorities, and he realized the authorities were too dumb to catch him. So then his goal was to chase more authorities. Wouldn't it be like?
I guess it's more like he wants to keep upping the stakes to see if anyone can ever like figure it
Okay,
out.
but
It's
let me
very
just add.
Saw.
But like punishing too. Like
It's also like, okay, wait. So if this is the level you're at, but you're at like FBI student level, I don't think he could have handled the real FBI guys. I'm just gonna be real. Listen, buddy, you needed a lot more experience. If you couldn't handle these kids who immediately turn on each other despite knowing each other for years,
yeah.
you couldn't kill them off. I think this is gonna be on you, my friend.
But you know that scene's weird too because she's like taking out LL Cool J, and they're just kind of sitting there together, like a foot apart,
Mm.
and that's kind of where he starts telling her his like scheme, where he's like, by the way, I manufactured this, here's my backstory, but it's like
Yeah.
she's so close, she could just get at you, but you guys are having a very casual conversation.
They're
You know
like
what I
sitting to
mean?
the sides like this, just like
It,
talking.
it was a weird framing. Yeah, they're just kind of chilling, and then they start fighting, but like I don't know, it was a weird way to like do that reveal.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
It was a very fun reveal.
but then he's like, by the way, you're so scared of water because your sister drowned or
He
whatever.
explains it
Yeah.
to her, and she's like,
He explained that to the girl that's her fear.
Yeah, he's like, by the way, I'm gonna drown you for this reason, and then he's like
Thanks,
throwing her
I
in the
guess.
water.
Yeah.
Oh, that it leads to the best scene of the movie, though. The
Yeah.
underwater.
Oh, I know. This is what I like when I was watching. I was like, I've seen this movie because I remember this insane climax
Yeah.
with the gun just above the water.
And I will say that I originally thought that it was LL Cool J, despite the fact that I've seen this movie before. I was like, wait, I thought it wasn't him, and then I was like, ooh, it took me for a surprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then he's like, they're fighting in the water, and then you find out that LL Cool J is not actually dead, and also he's working with the girl and he knows everything. They don't ever like. It's funny how much they explain everything else, and they don't ever explain like how LL Cool J figured anything out. I guess just because he was lying there and he listened.
Yeah, she had like pretend to kill him, but she just kind of hit him. I don't know.
She hit him in the back of the head. But then it was like,
it's
at that
fine.
point, she didn't know he was the killer. So was she just not trying to kill LL Cool J?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Least
I
homicidal
assume
cop?
she was trying to take him alive. But this is, I'm not a strong swimmer, but the idea of hovering just because they try to shoot at each other in the water, but the bullets just sink because you can't like shoot a gun underwater.
Cool.
So she literally is just like 2 feet beneath the water,
like this.
treading water with her hand with a gun. That seems so difficult.
It was
like,
very hard to do because like your body
that is insane.
naturally wants to push it to the top of the water. So you would have like, it's funny they don't show it as much, but she should have been like this. Like,
Yeah, she's just like
constantly fighting.
Yeah, she's very calm and just kind of like her feet are doing the kind of the treading water thing.
Listen,
but
Randy.
Yeah, and then,
next time have her be like this. Be like, oh, he's like, I know what your biggest fear is, having flippers when you drown. So I'm gonna put these flippers on you first. Hopefully this won't affect me later if we have some kind of weird shootout where the water pressure is gonna matter. And then,
but yeah, then they're trying to outdo each other because whoever surfaces first can get a shot off, and then he finally gives up and goes up for air, and she blasts him.
And then LL Cool J is like, I'm alive, and he goes, I know what his weakness was. Bullets.
Dude, He says 3 one-liners back to back. I wrote them down.
Oh, right.
He says, looks like we found out his weakness. Bullets. Oh no. Right before he does it, he goes, looks like your time is up.
Oh, yeah.
And he throws the watch down at him.
Oh yeah.
And then at the very end of all of it, he looks to her and he goes, good thing you hit like a girl. And then it's like
Oh,
back to
that's
back.
the explanation.
There's no other
Right.
dialogue. It's back to back. And I was like, wow, they let him have that.
That's so fun. It's also so funny to be like, oh yeah, the protagonist just got lucky a bunch, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah. He's like, good thing she hit me hard enough to where she thought she was knocking me out, but it was weak enough I could just pretend I was knocked out.
Yeah.
Which is, it worked out. I'm glad for
But
it.
see, but that's the thing. Okay, so then LL Cool J, I guess, was just waiting and like listening because he had no idea who the killer was at that point. He probably thought it was the girl.
Which, to be fair, he was like laying beneath both of them, so it makes sense he'd kind of like fake it a little longer
Rennie's
until
not
they
gonna
were
give you
like
all the
away.
answers. He's gonna give you
Right.
almost 102% of the answers. But then he's gonna take away one of the biggest answers so that you're like, oh, this will be discussed in Mindhunters 2.
Yeah.
I would be interested in Mindhunters
like it's a
too.
fun movie. It's kind of like, oh man, it'd be cool to watch this like at midnight, like in a theater, just with like everyone. I feel
yeah.
I feel like this movie should be re-examined. It's a fun time because
Yeah.
it's like the murders are cool, the cast is cool. It does keep you guessing, even if some of the explanations kind of dumb. But yeah, I thought overall, I don't know why, because this movie has like one of the biggest or lowest like Rotten Tomatoes scores ever.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's like really hated, and I'm like, I understand, like
It's very.
I can understand if like 90% of the people are like, I didn't really dislike it or like it. I kind of forgot about it. But to hate it, it just seems like that's weird.
Yeah, I probably too, like, I feel like whenever I see these like mid-budget movies that don't really exist anymore, I give it even more. I'm like, oh man, they shouldn't be still keep making movies like this,
Yeah.
these like 30 million budget, kind of thriller for adults kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when
So.
that thriller for adults involves someone smoking themselves to death.
Right, like a stupid one, but I'm like rated R. It's not like PG-13, and you just don't get that anymore.
Yeah. But overall, I would say this movie's a lot of fun. I think more people should watch it because I feel like
too.
people are hating on this movie for no reason. I mean, look, let me reiterate. There are reasons.
Whoa.
But too harsh.
No, I think this is one of those hidden gems that I have a feeling way down the line could probably come back.
Yeah, I feel like if they showed this like at the Hollywood Theater, people would be eat it up.
Oh yeah.
But
This was also like, God, it was. So then he's barely in the movie, but it's like the coolest Val Kilmer look.
Yeah.
Because he's got like the long hair, glasses, and trench coat.
Yeah, and an asshole. He's just like,
I know.
eating
It's like
cake.
I wanted more of him just like taunting them before you find out he's a dead puppet.
I know. I do wish that
on
there
a
was
string.
more Val Kilmer. I will say that.
And just being smarmy, and being like, you won't pass my tests.
Yeah.
So.
I almost wish that they had, like, this movie made me realize that Val Kilmer should have been a villain because he has such a cool, like, evil voice,
Yeah.
He's always like, hey. I also like, I forgot to say this, but almost every scene with just one character, they're almost always backlit in a very weird,
I noticed
like, a
the
hero.
cinematography in this is
They always have the lighting. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, guys, this guy's showing off. And then they're like, hey, should we put more than $20 into this boat explosion that happens at the beginning? And they're like, nah, we'll figure it out. Because there's a part at the beginning where they're all going to a boat and it explodes. They're like, let's get out of there.
Oh yeah, because they're like, let's just leave.
And whoever CGI'd that bomb, it's like it covers the whole port. Where I was like, wait, did everyone just die in this movie?
It's like the most cinematic explosion ever. Like early 2000s cinematic. Like it's like,
Yeah. And they're like,
Yeah, fine. Like that.
"Ah!"
That was an exposition. Here's why they have to say explosion. So I'm
Yeah.
fine with
And
it being kind of
that girl
shoddy.
was like, "Oh no, I don't know how to swim," or swimming weakness, I
Oh,
guess.
and that's my biggest thing is with her. Like, she does this thing throughout the movie constantly of like, well, she freezes. That's her whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But she's always like, just like dead, but then she's not dead. So it's
Oh yeah.
like that they pull her out of the water, and she's like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh. And then there's another time too. She's like on the floor, and she's like it's weird. I've been catching
Yeah,
it
and they
throughout the
don't really
movie,
ever address it, to be honest. It's
and
just
I
like,
kind of was like, is that her freezing up or like?
yeah.
I think it was supposed to get like kind of a catatonic type. Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. I kind of get it because then it's like at the end is like finally she's like
she got
not freezing up.
I get it, but
She rose to
I
the
feel like
occasion.
much like a lot of the stuff in this movie, they went too hardcore with explaining how, like, it's
That's
so
almost like the that's almost the fun of the movie though, is like every conversation I was like, by the way, did you know that I'm scared of swimming? He's like, well, I love my gun and I'll never be a part with it. It's like we're just ordering coffee,
it's
guys.
also
You
like,
don't need to.
it's so funny because the best part is like, how are they gonna kill these people? Because like you see all, like, there's a part where the mummy goes out, like she's like, I'm leaving you guys, and then it just immediately cuts to all these, every single cigarette machine in the little fake town drops the cigarettes, and
that
it's
was a
like,
cool sequence though.
A, why is there so many cigarette machines in this town? But B, how are they gonna do it? And I bet you nobody guessed that they were gonna do
Acid
it by
cigarettes.
putting too
Yeah,
much
I
acid in the cigarette.
I thought it was gonna be like, oh, oil and it catches something on fire, like something.
Because
You know,
she's
I don't
takes
have the mine hunters'
I don't have the
minds. I'm not.
yeah.
puppeteer's mind, is what you don't have.
Yeah. But it's good. It's a rollicking good
Yeah.
time, I would
It makes me
say.
Yeah.
excited to see The Strangers coming out this year, because if it's as ridiculous as this movie, I'm gonna be 100% on board. As someone who was bored with The Strangers, I want to see them kill people by using by using ice cream and fucking
Wait, is it
cigarettes.
is it Rennie Harlan doing The Strangers or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to look right now.
Yeah, Rennie Harlan's rebooting The Strangers. He made three
But he
movies
didn't.
back to
Ah,
back, and they're all going to release this year. It's like Lord
But
of
he
the
didn't.
Rings, except these movies are good.
Did he do the first The
No,
Strangers?
Rennie Harlan has had no relationship to The Strangers whatsoever, which makes me wonder why he chose to do the Strangers. But then you realize that the last movie he made was 2003's Mindhunters, and you're like, okay, I get it, Rennie. Good luck to you,
yeah,
my friend.
no. Oh, well, you're
He's
right.
done some
No,
stuff.
he's producer.
He did 12 rounds.
Oh,
I
he
didn't
did do
see
12
12
rounds.
rounds. Um,
Producer.
he did a. I've never even heard of this. I was like, okay, I see why he's doing The Strangers because did not know. He did do Reunion 3 singles cruise.
Well, there you go.
So,
But yeah, good movie. Makes me want to watch Strangers. Any last words, guys?
Uh,
um,
well, looks like your time is up. You know.
yeah, when you're try to when you're hunting, try to make sure you're the mind hunter and not the mind prey. That's my
Very
advice.
true.
Ooh.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, that about does it, guys. We'll see you next time on the Bomb